Hello everyone, welcome to Java tutorials. My name is Kishore. In this video, we are going to discuss about how the constructors are invoked whenever you create an object of a class that is involved in an inheritance hierarchy. To understand what we will do is we will take a few simple classes, that is class A, then class B extends A, and then class C extends B. I have three classes where class A is the superclass, B is the subclass of A, and C is the subclass of B. What I will do is I will be creating constructors on all these classes. Let me create default constructor and we will just print some simple statement like this: A constructor. Then in B, we will create a default constructor and print B constructor. Then in C, we will print C constructor by creating the default constructor. What you need to understand is whenever you create an object of any of the subclass, automatically the parent class constructors will be invoked. Let us observe what happens if I create an object of C. Let me create an object of C like this. And if I run this program, notice it is calling A constructor, B constructor, and C constructor. Why it is happening like this? Because whenever you create an object of subclass, before initializing the subclass properties, the control automatically goes to its parent class. Who is the parent class of C? That is class B, and it is going to look for the constructor in class B. But which constructor it looks is, by default, it always looks for the default constructor. Because of that, it invokes the default constructor of class B, but B also is a subclass of one class, that is A. Before invoking the B constructor, the control goes to the parent class of B, that is A constructor. Again, here also the same condition applies. The constructors in class B always look for the default constructor of its parent class, no matter how many constructors are there in the parent class. By default, it looks for the default constructor only. When the control goes to the default constructor of A, before invoking the default constructor of A, the control goes to the superclass of A. Now the question comes, who is the superclass of A? If a class doesn't extend any class, then automatically the class becomes the subclass of one of the superclass called object. This is the topmost class in Java, that is the superclass, and every class will inherit object class. It means the control goes to the object class constructor and invokes that object class constructor, thereby initializes the object and then comes back and finishes the class A constructor statement's execution. Since class A constructor is invoked by B constructor, the B constructor is going to finish its execution so that B class properties will be initialized, and B constructor was invoked by C so that the rest of the statements of class C constructor is going to be invoked so that the class C properties also will be initialized. For that reason only we get this output. Let me print one delimiter like this and create the object of B, and let's see what happens. If I run this program, I see once the object of B is created, first it is calling the A constructor and then B constructor. But what happens is when the object of B is created using this constructor, the control first goes to the A constructor, and A constructor is not going to be executed because the control goes to the superclass of A, that is object class constructor, And once the object class constructor is completely executed, then it comes back and invokes the A constructor, and then it is going to invoke the B constructor. And if I print this delimiter and create the object of A, I will see only A constructor getting executed. Let's run the program. You can see only the A constructor is getting executed. What happens here is when this constructor is executed, the control first goes to the object class constructor, and then it is going to execute the remaining statements of the class A constructor. And because in the object class constructor there are no print statements, we are not getting any print statements while invoking the object class constructor. So here, why the subclass constructor automatically calls the parent class constructor is to initialize the parent class members first. Before subclass members are initialized, parent class members must be initialized. For that reason, automatically Java compiler invokes the superclass constructors. But here, one more condition is every subclass constructor, no matter how many constructors are there in your subclass, they all will automatically call only the default constructor of its parent class. Let us try to keep some parameterized constructor in class A and see what happens. I will create one parameterized constructor and let me print A int constructor. If I create an object of A by passing the parameter, let's say 80, then the output is going to be printing A int constructor because you're creating the object by passing the parameter. The control invokes this constructor. But what happens here is this constructor first invokes the object class default constructor. Let us create one parameterized constructor in class B and we will print bint constructor. And what I will do is I will just change this B default constructor to parameterized constructor like 75. Let us see what happens when I create the object of B, but this time we are passing parameter. In that case, notice when the object of B with parameter is created, it is still invoking the default constructor of class A. Why is whenever you create an object of any subclass, no matter you are using which constructor, every subclass constructor invokes only the default constructor, not any other constructor. But is it possible that we can change that behavior where I want subclass constructor to call overloaded constructor of its parent class? Yes, it is possible. How to do that? For that, you should use super method. By default, every subclass has this statement in the very first line. In the very first line of the constructor, we have this super call in every constructor. Even if you do not write, compiler is going to have this statement implicitly. Because of that reason only, the subclass constructors are invoking the parent class constructor. What is the meaning of super statement is call superclass constructor and it is not taking any parameter. So this means the superclass of B is A, so it invokes the constructor which is not taking any parameter, and here also the same thing, it is inside the class B, so superclass of class B is A, it invokes the default constructor of A. In case of class C, this super means super constructor of class C, and the superclass for class C is B, so it invokes the default constructor of class B. Here, what happens is the superclass of A is object, it invokes the default constructor of object. Here also it invokes the default constructor of object. But I can still change its behavior. What I will do is I will try to pass some number here like 25. What happens is now the compiler which is going to have the default constructor invocation, that is going to be overwritten by this super with parameter. And whenever you create an object of B with the default constructor, the control would call the superclass constructor taking an int parameter. That is going to be A of int, but that constructor should be present. Is it present? Yes. A with int parameter is present, so there won't be any problem. In case A int is not present, it would raise an error. Let me show you. If I pass 25, 30, it will look for constructor that is taking two parameter because the superclass A doesn't have the constructor taking two parameters, it is giving an error. But if I just pass one parameter, then it will look for the constructor taking int parameter, and in the superclass it is present, so there won't be any problem. And let us just create the object of B. This time I will just remove everything. This time let us just create an object of B using the default constructor. Now what happens? Let's run the program. You see it is now calling the superclass constructor taking int parameter because the object created on default constructor invokes the superclass constructor taking one argument, that is this constructor, and this A taking int is going to invoke the object class constructor, but the B default constructor is invoking the parameterized constructor of class A. Then if I create an object of C, what happens? Let me comment this and create the object of C with the default constructor. In that case, you can observe the B default constructor is invoking A int constructor. For that reason, it is printing A int constructor. You can also pass this X variable to the super statement like this, so that when you create an object of B by passing a parameter, then the parameterized constructor of B invokes the parameterized constructor of its parent class A. So here it is A of int. We will comment this. Let me create an object of B that is going to take one parameter. Now if I run the program, you can observe the parameterized constructor of B is invoking parameterized constructor of A because the constructor which is executed is this parameterized constructor. First the control goes to the superclass of B, that is A, taking a parameter, that is this, and once it completes the object class constructor invocation, it prints this statement, and then it is going to print this B int constructor statement. Now you might be thinking, what is the purpose of this super keyword with arguments? The purpose is the subclass doesn't need to initialize the superclass members. It can always invoke the superclass constructor by passing parameters, so that superclass will take care of initializing the superclass members, and then subclass can initialize the subclass members from the next line onwards. But this program is just to understand how the constructors are getting executed in the inheritance hierarchy. See you in the next video. Thank you so much.